I'm Casey Bryant.
And I'm Matt McNamara.
Welcome to This Week in Sports.
It's official. Regular season football is back in Los Angeles for the first time since 1994. After getting shut out in San Francisco Week 1, the Rams rechristened the Coliseum with a 9-3 win over the division rival Seahawks. Over 90,000 fans were in attendance for the win, plus a performance by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. More on this story a little later.
18-year-old U.S. phenom Christian Pulisic has the tall task of living up to the moniker of the American Messi, but so far the comparison has been more than appropriate. All eyes have been on him since making his United States men's national team debut earlier this year, and he continued to impress this past weekend with his parent club Borussia Dortmund. Pulisic scored a goal and added a couple assists to his already impressive tally. This weekend's performance came off a 6-0 win for Dortmund in the Champions League.
It's no secret that Revis Island has already had too many visitors this season. People are starting to notice the dip in the Star Corners play, among them J.R. Smith. Smith tweeted this during the Thursday night showdown between the Jets and Bills. Hashtag Revis Island turning into a tourist resort. Hashtag just saying. Revis hit back with a couple tweets of his own, but the real question remains, when will Revis get over the slump? Can he still be considered a top cornerback of the league?
Going into Saturday, the Florida State-Louisville game was anticipated to one of the games of the year in the ACC. That did not last long. The Cardinals dismantled the Seminoles behind a 5 total touchdowns from Louisville quarterback Lamar Jackson. Jackson threw for 216 yards and added another 146 on the ground to jump to the top in the Heisman conversation.
So jumping back into the NFL, as we said before, the Rams, this is their first time being back in Los Angeles since 1994. It's a big deal. A lot of people are excited. There's going to be a new stadium coming in. So a lot of people are wondering, as far as this being an entertainment capital, whether it really matters whether the Rams being good or not is going to affect them. What do you think about this so far?
Well, I think it's appropriate you mentioned that they're in Hollywood this year because with Hollywood, it's glitz, it's glamour, it's fake. That's what the Los Angeles Rams are this year. They are fake. They have a fake starting quarterback in Case Keenum. They have a fake number 1 wide receiver in Tavon Austin. They are last in total yards. Still 22 years since they scored a touchdown as a Los Angeles team. Shutout week 1, 3 field goals week 2. That is a weak performance, my friend. Case Keenum, the man is behind Jay Cutler in raw QB rating. Behind Jay Cutler.
Let's not forget about Todd Gurley. Just his numbers overall. If you're a fantasy owner, I am so sorry, but Todd Gurley just has not been up to expectation so far. Yeah, the defense played well, but they played well against a Seahawks offense that has been just absolutely dreadful. Their only score, Stephen Hauschka field goal. Russell Wilson, the first time he hasn't scored a touchdown in 17 games. That was the longest streak in the NFL. And still, Russell Wilson just not performing up to expectations. But the Rams, they can't go through these first 2 games 1-1 with this defense and say, okay, we're back in business. Because although, yes, LA is the entertainment capital of the world, people still have expectations. Think about the Clippers. No one cared about the Clippers when they did bad, even though they played in Los Angeles. They cared about the Lakers. And there are other teams in California, like the 49ers, that if they play better, more people are going to pay attention to them over the Rams. I just don't think that in any way the Rams not doing well is going to affect their attendance. It can only affect them going down as far as attendance goes, and I don't think that just them playing well is going to help them.
I think it's very rare. We were showing highlights there before. They were actually showing highlights of Case Keenum completions, which is a rare thing. So I'm impressed. Anyway, so now that we're 2 weeks into the season here, Matt, what has been your biggest takeaway here from the early goings?
I mean, my biggest takeaway, a lot of teams are kind of middling so far. Some teams are playing up to expectation, some are not. The team that I've been impressed with so far is the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, although they did make the playoffs last year, a lot of people felt, well, it was kind of a fluke. They had Brian Hoyer as their quarterback. They were going on and off as far as their quarterback play goes. But now they bring in Brock Osweiler, who a lot of people were on the fence about as far as how he would do. They bring in Lamar Miller. They still have a solid defense with J.J. Watt and leading that team. And also, you got to remember DeAndre Hopkins. They're 2-0 so far. Their offenses look great. They played against good teams like the Bears and the Chiefs. Offenses look great. The defenses look great. They played very well at home. They do have a tough challenge, I will say, though, against the Pats. But if they can continue to play this way, they will run away with the AFC South, because the AFC South, as of now, and as it is most years, is a joke. There's always one team that steps it up, and this year it's probably going to be the Texans. The Colts are going down. The Jaguars not so well, and the Titans, I'm not so sure. So really for me, the Texans have been the team that's really impressed me so far.
That division is wide open, and speaking of wide open divisions, how about the NFC East, which is normally an incredibly competitive division, and the team that may just benefit from this division being sort of weak this year, the New York Giants. Yeah. It's weird that we're actually in New York in a season where the New York Giants might actually succeed. It's incredible. They've started off 2-0 after historically pretty terrible starts the past few years. Now they've gotten pretty, I guess, impressive in a way in that they actually didn't lose them. They didn't find a way to screw up. They beat the Saints last week by a field goal. Now they have the Washington Redskins coming up this week, and the Redskins are starting to flounder a little bit. There's doubt in their camp as far as Kirk Cousins goes. So you're starting to wonder, this could be the Giants' year. This could be the year that finally all of their additions in the secondary on defense, the addition of Sterling Shepard has certainly been impressive.
Huge. And let's not forget about Victor Cruz returning.
Of course.
And you talk about Bob McAdoo and this being his first year as the head coach and the way that they've played with him as the head coach. A lot of people were nervous about his offensive system, but they've seemed to flourish pretty well. Not so well against the Saints. First game they did much better, but they're starting to work it out. Like I said before, Victor Cruz is back. They've got Sterling Shepard in the mix. They've got a nice mix so far of Rashad Jennings and Fareen, who really did not impress so far as they were the offensive weapons that people expected last year. But with Jennings and his injuries, Fareen dropping a lot of balls, not being quite the offensive weapon you would think the Giants would start to flounder again this year. But for some reason, and you probably have to add over those big free agent market signings that they got with guys like Snacks, Damon Harrison, and Olivier Vernon, the Giants have just looked very well so far. They shut down Drew Brees, who in the past week just annihilated.
He had 430 yards. He killed my fantasy team in week 1.
And then he was on my fantasy team this week, and he killed it a little bit too. Still won, but it's okay. So Drew Brees, it's a very impressive team, but I have to admit, the Giants are very impressive too.
Staying in the East, the Buffalo Bills have released their offensive coordinator after a players-only meeting without Rex Ryan. Matt, what do you make of a change this early in the year for the Buffalo Bills? Seems a little reactionary, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm a little bit shocked about that, because if anything, based on the way they played against the Jets, they really should fire Rob Ryan, because the defense just did not look great at all. I mean, Matt Forte had a great first game, no doubt, but overall, man, the Bills' offense actually looked very good. Tyrod Taylor was making some huge deep passes. LaShawn McCoy is really starting to, it looks like and seems like, starting to really integrate himself into this offensive set. So for me, the fact that they're going to lose Greg Roman this early on in the season, there had to be something building up into that earlier on in the season. Otherwise, they would not have gone to that. It's a weird mix of the ownership and the players-only meeting without Rex present. It's just so many fishy things. The Bills themselves as a system right now, they're just all over the place as far as, their playability. They're supposed to be really good in defense with Rex Ryan at the helm, but they're not doing too well. So for me, this is just the start of what could be a very, very bad year for the Bills so far.
Yeah, you wonder if there's something behind the scenes, especially since so much was made of the Ryan brothers being together this year. But staying in the AFC East, the New England Patriots, Jimmy Garoppolo, leading the Patriots to 2 wins, but at what cost? Jimmy Garoppolo took a nasty hit in Week 2, has a shoulder injury, is questionable for Week 3. Matt, what happens if Jimmy Garoppolo is out? Jimmy Garoppolo leading the league in raw QBR, as we all predicted.
I mean, yes,
who didn't see this coming?
Predicted that. I don't think it's that big of a deal for the Patriots. Obviously, Tom Brady coming back in Week 5. Jacoby Brissett did not look too bad at all, honestly, I will say. The Dolphins were able to make a comeback on him, but I wouldn't necessarily blame Brissett himself. But he looked pretty comfortable, which is very surprising. He's being the third string. I guess it's just, the Patriots system where you throw in anyone and they're just going to somehow fit in really well. You saw with Matt Castle a few years ago. Everyone thought, oh, he's the be-all, end-all. And it was just because he was a part of this Patriots defense. Offense, sorry.
I mean, look at that hit right there. He's being driven into the ground. He lands on that right shoulder really funky, starts rolling over. I mean, that's just a nasty hit there. It's clean. It looks to be clean.
It is clean, but it's always tough to see, especially for a guy like that. Just getting this big opportunity of his to play in the league, to be a big part of this team, and make an impact for the first 4 games, an impact that already most people thought, wow, how is he making this impact so early? I thought the Patriots would go 1-3 or 2-2. They're already 2-0, and what looks like it, they should probably go around 3-1, like I said before. Next week they have a tough matchup against the Texans, but I would say the Patriots will go 3-1, hand the car keys over to Tom Brady, and from there he'll just...
From there, you're cruising on the highway.
Just do what Tom Brady does, and I feel like he's going to come out with a vengeance. So I don't think it's the biggest deal that Garoppolo is out for this amount of time, because Brissett's good. LeGarrette Blount will obviously step up like he did last week. I'm not concerned if I'm the Patriots right now.
Well, if quarterback isn't a big deal for the New England Patriots, is it a big deal then for the two reigning champions of their respective conferences, the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers? Cam Newton got knocked around in Week 1 by the Denver defense, and Trevor Siemian has been So, I mean, is there any doubt in your mind then that Denver and Carolina can return to the big dance this year?
There are definitely some doubts. I think on the Denver side, what they do have is they do have a strong defense, as they do, which obviously last year, Peyton Manning did not play up to any sort of standard whatsoever compared to other years that he's played for, and the Denver defense did really carry them. They do have C.J. Anderson, who has been stepped up as a strong running back this year. I'm not sure with Simeon at the helm if it will be enough for them. And on the Carolina side, obviously we saw against the 49ers how they just absolutely were able to torch them. And
so much of that is on Cam Newton, because Cam Newton, they need Cam Newton to be the MVP of this team. They can't be relying on any other weapons. He's the guy.
Exactly, and their defense has started to falter a little bit. You saw what's happened since Josh Norman's left the team. Like I said before, the offense has been strong. Their defense can help them out in a way, but with some of the injuries and some of the players that have left so far, it's going to be tough. But I think on both sides, they both have a chance, but as we've seen before in past years, even good teams that have played in the Super Bowl the previous year, even if they're good the next year, it's not always going to help them carry them to the next season as far as that goes. It's very rare you see two teams that have played in the Super Bowl and played to that caliber return as that goes as far as going back to the Super Bowl.
There certainly is a lot of pressure on both teams. Speaking of pressure, stay with us because after the break, we are talking MLB playoff races. Don't go away.
Welcome back to This Week in Sports. With September almost wrapping up, we're going to talk a little bit now about the MLB playoff picture and some of the teams involved in it. So first, leading off, we're going to talk about the Mets, because everyone loves to talk about the Mets.
Meet the Mets. Greet the Mets.
The Mets have already somehow, despite all the injury concerns, been able to slide up right into the top of the wild card spot, despite many different replacements, many different players. How have the Mets been able to do it?
A wing and a prayer, mostly. There is no good explanation for how the Mets have actually been able to pull this off. They've got Asdrubal Cabrera hobbling around like he's Roy Hobbs on one leg. You've got Harvey DeGrom, done for the year. Duda and Matz, up in the air. Walker and Wright, done for the year. Travis d'Arnaud played himself into the bench. If I told you, heading into this year, that the Mets would be without their catcher, their first baseman, their second baseman, their third baseman, and their top two starting pitchers, where would you say they'd be?
Not where they are right now. I will say definitely as far as that. I would also give some credit to some of their young talent coming in. Matt Reynolds and TJ Rivera as far as their hitting prowess and what they've been able to add to the lineup.
Rivera had a home run just yesterday.
Yeah, and with their pitching with Lugo and Yanoa coming off and making some pretty strong starts, it's what they've expected of the Mets. And I think, obviously with Cespedes being clutch, Cespedes as he usually is, it's been enough. And I feel like the Mets are saying, we can still do this. We've got a lot of talent. And for a team that a lot of people didn't think had a lot of depth, they seem to be doing pretty good to me so far.
Got to show some love to Rob Gazelman, a.k.a. Jacob deGrom impersonator.
Oh, obviously.
I mean, the hair is good.
The flow
has been good, and the slider's been good, so
Mets
can't really complain either way.
Now, on the opposite note, we have the New York Yankees on the other side of the things. Now, obviously, with the Yankees, they're making a strong run, coming in just a few games back going into that Red Sox series, but they came to Boston and they left Boston not so good. So you got to wonder, what has been the Yankees' downfall so far?
Their downfall has been they've played real teams. So let's really think about it here. They lost 2 of 3 to the Orioles. They lost 2 of 3 to the Dodgers. They got swept clean by the Boston Red Sox. Who have they beaten? They took 4 games from the Rays? La-di-da. You're supposed to take 4 games from the Tampa Bay Rays. Who'd you beat? The Toronto Blue Jays? The Blue Jays have been crashing and burning since mid-August. I mean, this is really the Yankees coming back down to earth. It's people realizing that Judge and Austin are not the superstars that they were when they first came up. They were superstars the first 2 days, and now all of a sudden they're hitting 180. It's no coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just expect consistency out of Gary Sanchez. As phenomenal as he has been, he's really been the only offensive consistent offensive spark for the Yankees. Plus, you got to wonder, and I know this is kind of ironic, but the bullpen has kind of been the downfall for them recently.
I mean, you would think that when you deal away 2 of the best pitchers in baseball.
And also when your starters can't make it through the 5th and 6th innings, when they're starting to get tired and you have to rely on this mishmash of pitchers that no one's ever heard of.
It's a patchwork team.
it's tough, and even Betances has faltered because of all the pressure put on top of him. So overall, it's just been a little bit of a mix-up. It's not. I wouldn't put it all on Girardi. I would just say that, with the shakeup, you had to expect at some point that they were going to sort of falter. No one really expected them to be in the playoffs to begin with. The fact that they made this run has been impressive, but it's not looking so good right now for the Yankees.
I'll just say this right now in regards to the Baby Bombers and all the hype that was coming up with them. I got 3 names for you here. I got Shelly Duncan, I got Lastings Millage, I got Mike Jacobs. Where any of these people, I don't know, but they all had a slew of home runs when they first came up, and now they faded into oblivion.
2 of them were worth the Mets. So.
Yeah, that's
Shelly Duncan's was a rare exception.
Ooh.
So moving on from that point, now that we know the Yankees might not make it to the playoff picture, the Mets might. What do you have overall as your playoff picture for both sides?
I have the Toronto Blue Jays slipping out of the second American League wildcard spot. I have the Baltimore Orioles clinging to that first spot, just barely. And then I have the Seattle Mariners sliding their way, and the Mariners have taken 10 of their last 11 to actually slide into that last wildcard spot. I think they have a favorable schedule. They play the Jays right now. The fate is in their hands. And then they play the Twins. I mean, the Jays have the Yankees, and the Tigers are playing Cleveland and Kansas City. The schedule might actually be in the favor of the Seattle Mariners, who have come from nowhere to actually kind of be competitive.
Definitely.
And it's exciting. That's what September baseball is.
I definitely agree as far as the Mariners being a dark horse as far as slipping into that wild card. I have the Orioles and Blue Jays right now, but that could definitely change. And then on the National League side, I have the Mets. I think that the way they've been playing so far, they have probably the easiest schedule of any of those other wild card teams.
Of course, no winning teams.
I don't know. I just feel like the Giants. I'm not going to say they're going to win the World Series this year, but I think despite the faltering that they've had, I think they can just squeak it out enough because of the fact that the Cardinals have been struggling so much. So I feel like the Giants will be able to slip in. And then it's pretty simple as far as the division. Sox, Indians, Rangers, Cubs, Nats, Dodgers. Is it any easier than that?
No, divisions are all set, but I got the Cardinals over the Giants, but we'll see how that plays out. When we come back, we are talking the World Cup of Hockey. Don't go anywhere. This is This Week in Sports. Welcome back to This Week in Sports. Casey Bryant alongside Matt McNamara. The World Cup of Hockey is back after a 22-year hiatus, and as totally meaningless, passionless exhibition games that nobody asked for go, it's been decent. The Frankenstein Patchwork Squad Team Europe is currently the first team in the tournament with 2 wins. Sweden just got there this afternoon. Team Europe leading Group A. At the bottom of their group, Team USA needing a win over Canada tonight to stay alive. Bottom line, Matt, can it happen?
I don't think so. I don't think any part of.
Follow-up question, are you an American?
I am an American, but I have to be realistic in these expectations. And I don't think that the way the U.S. has played so far, the way that the U.S. has been coached so far, gives any reason for them to win against a much better Canada team. It happens in the Olympics. It happens all over the Winter Olympics. It happens all the time. It's happening again. There's no confidence.
Here's the deal with Team USA. Their jerseys are bad, their coach is bad, their system is bad, the players are bad. It's all bad.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. I mean, at this point, Team USA has become a laughingstock, and that position was further cemented when John Tortorella, their head coach, made the questionable decision to bench top-pairing defenseman Dustin Byfuglien, star of the Winnipeg Jets, for the first game of the tournament. What is the point of having an elite defenseman like Dustin Byfuglien on your team if he's not going to play alongside Ryan McDonough on your top pairing?
I don't know. And I just feel like, it's typical Tortorella. It's all about him. He's had the whole comments about, if my players sit during the national anthem, I'm going to bench them. It's just, Tortorella, it's really a lot about himself. It's all about it seems to be a lot of times about his ego, not necessarily about, how the players he positions. I mean, I hate to say this, but for the U.S., for the Olympics, they get Coach K, and then for this, we get Tortorella.
John Tortorella.
That's the best we could get? The best we could get?
This tournament is really... The people that should be most offended watching this tournament is Blue Jackets fans. Because he's playing Jack Johnson over Dustin Byfuglien. He already chased Ryan Johansson out of time. What is he going to do next? I mean, what is this guy capable of? And it's funny you bring up the whole anthem stance. John Tortorella is trying to incite nationalism in a tournament that has a Team North America and a Team Europe. I mean, what are they going to do? Play 8 national anthems simultaneously? I mean, what is this guy thinking?
I don't know. I'm really confused with this whole team because, yesterday Europe was playing the Czech Republic, and I'm pretty sure the Czech Republic is a part of Europe. And then the North America thing, it's like a mixture of like U.S. and Canada. It kind of feels like in high school when you had like 2 teams in the same district and they combined them because of like budget concerns. Like, yeah, they're going to play well, but it's just like it doesn't really make sense. It's supposed to be a rivalry. It's just very confusing, especially for someone like me and for most of us who are watching it for the very first time.
In Team USA, they lost 2-0 to Team Europe. Patrick Kane, who is allegedly their best player, guilty of an egregious turnover that led to the second goal. The last person to score a goal in an international game, Phil Kessel, not to be seen on the roster because John Tortorella is John Tortorella.
I know, Phil Kessel's a pretty good player, I would say.
Pretty good. Stanley Cup champ, Conn Smythe finalist. I'd say he's okay.
He's got some playing talent.
He's the good buns, I'd say that. So if Team USA has been underwhelming, who has impressed you so far?
Well, I would definitely say Team Europe. I mean, they had, like I said before, a big win over Czech yesterday. They've got a great group of talent on their team. A team that really knows a lot of good team players on the team. Talk about guys like Chari, talk about guys that we've seen play really well as a team before, like Matt Zuccarello. I think they've come out of here and really impressed, especially when you consider that they're in the same, sort of, league as Russia and Canada, teams that would normally seem to impress but haven't done quite as well. Although obviously Canada will probably face them at some point, in the finals or something. Russia been on and off. They had a good one yesterday against North America. But for me, it's really been Team Europe as far as who's really impressed me the most as far as the group of talent that they've had playing together.
Yeah, definitely. And there were such low expectations for Team Europe heading into this year because none of the countries that are in Team Europe are really prototypical hockey giants. You have guys like Matt Zuccarello, Zdeno Chara, Leon Draisaitl, all role player guys, but they've all been a very integral part to this team. Zuccarello has a goal and an assist. Draisaitl had a really impressive goal against Team USA. And now Team Europe actually kind of looks like a favorite.
Yeah,
and so when they win and they're all standing on that podium, medals around their neck, I cannot wait to hear Europe's The Final Countdown, which I think is their national anthem.
The national anthem because they have to pick one.
I want them standing at attention for the entire 5.5-minute song.
There's no real way to remix all the national anthems together. So Final Countdown. I mean, first of all, it's a great sport anthem, but come on, it's there. You just gotta do it.
All right, so. Moving on, back to the NFL news in brief, the people have spoken. Harambe is back to being an acceptable custom nameplate for NFL jerseys. Fans were torn when the name appeared on the list of banned retailer names this past week. The gorilla has become an internet sensation following his tragic death, gaining a cult status among fans, animal support groups, and idiot college students. R.I.P. Harambe with the number 69 and other slogans can be seen around the MLB, NFL, and other sporting events, as no one can seem to get enough of him. That group does certainly not include me.
It's the typical NFL. They just flip-flop too much. Make a decision. Either ban it or don't ban it. And at this point, who really wants to buy Harambe merchandise? I understand right now it's popular, but in a month or so, are you really going to look into your closet and be like, wow, I'm really glad I bought that Harambe 69 jersey?
That's something that you're going to have to explain to your wife and kid one day.
I know.
Why do you own this?
That's like my brother with the Tim Tebow Jets jersey. Like, why? And now with the Tim Tebow Mets jersey, why?
Some things you just can't explain.
You can't. You got to stop with the fads. You just got to realize. You got to look for long-term investment, not for fads.
And on that bombshell, it's time to end. I'm Casey Bryant.
And I'm Matt McNamara.
Thank you for tuning in to This Week in Sports.